Hello, good morning, bonjour, buenos dias, good morning, buongiorno, and huomenta, as they say over in Finland. For those of you joining us from further afield, good afternoon and indeed good evening, and welcome to another one of our instalments of webinars. The next one, this is Digital Services Today, Monitoring Maintenance. My name is Josh Singer. I'm responsible for International Partner Business Development here at Helvar. And I also have the great privilege of doing intros at the moment for these regular slots. So you join me today from the bottom of my garden, once again, just north of London. And I thought I'd actually let you in on a bit of a secret today as to how this is all working. We've all had to be a bit creative recently in our remote working methods. So for me today, my laptop is balanced on an outdoor chiminea, and behind that there's a bamboo pole which has got my notes stuck to it. So yeah, just thought I'd share a little bit with you about how we're doing all of this. So before we get started, once again, a huge thank you to everybody for taking the time out to join us today. We really do hope that you and your loved ones are all safe and well during this difficult time. Today in the webinar, we'll be exploring how customers can save time and optimize their costs through our remote digital services that we call monitoring and maintenance. With remote everything being more important than ever at the moment, there's never been a better time to learn about this key topic. So I'm delighted to introduce our resident expert on the matter. Guiding us through today's digital journey is Helvar's Service Sales Director, Ilkka Mäkelä. And just as a side note, we'll be answering questions at the end as always, so please type any questions you may have into the question box and we'll answer as many as we can. If we can't get to you, we'll check them at the end of the webinar and we'll send out a communication. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ilkka. Good morning, Ilkka. How's the weather today over in Finland?
Good morning, Josh. Good morning. The weather is beautiful, bright, sunny, warm, as it always is in Finland.
Not every time I've been there, I must confess. I wanted to ask you something quickly before we get started, actually. I mentioned in the intro that as at the moment we have some challenging times when it comes to remote working. Are you seeing more interest in remote services? Are you getting more inquiries about it?
Yes, funny you should ask. Because of this situation we currently have, I actually do see slightly more interest now. I think people are more interested in finding out remote working options, technologies, and solutions, and also just as a practical point, I think people have slightly more time now to talk about these things. They're not running maybe all the normal day-to-day things that they are used to, but now they have a bit more time to take a step back and think about how could I improve my business? How could I develop my business? Are there solutions out there that I could use to help me be more efficient? And that's why we're seeing a slightly more traction now, which is very nice.
Good, glad to hear it. Okay, well, I'll hand over to you. I'll put myself on mute and I'll let you get on with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Josh. So, I should be able to kill this window. There you go. So welcome to our webinar about digital services at Helvar. I always like to start off with the Helvar value proposition because it links very nicely with these services. But before I do that, let me introduce myself a bit more. Thank you, Josh, for that introduction. But again, my name is Ilkka Mäkelä, and I've worked for Helvar for over a year now, almost a year and a half, and I am responsible for digital service sales at Helvar on a global level. We have direct sales in Finland, Sweden, and the UK, but then we also sell through our partner network all around the world. So I'm joining you today from Espoo, Finland, from our office, and I happen to be the only person in the office currently, but that's okay. Let's talk about digital services, and let's start with the Helvar value proposition. We bring intelligence and insight into your space, improving well-being and efficiency, all through our lighting control solutions. The reason I want to show this and start with this is that most of the people on the call probably know Helvar quite well, I assume. and you know us from light control solutions, and that's what we do. That's where our expertise is. But now this new value proposition that you see, it's building a bridge nicely into the future, where we state our future ambition, which has to do with even more than light controls. So we really want to bring intelligence and insight into spaces, make them brighter spaces by doing so. And that links very nicely with our digital services that we talk about today. So let's get into it. If you have questions, please type them in, and we will get to them towards the end of the webinar. I like to start talking about the digital services at Helvar by talking about what they enable, what the benefits of digital services could be. So let's start with that. On one hand side, we have created these digital services to help our customers reduce costs. Reduce costs mainly in the monitoring and maintenance of light control solutions. On the other hand, these services can also enable our customers to increase efficiency. And this means increase efficiency of a building, increase efficiency of space, increase efficiency of servicing a building. So these are two distinct types of benefits. The first one, reducing cost, would be more aimed at installer and facilities management target audiences. And the latter, increasing efficiency of space, is more aimed at the facilities management level, but also now to the owner of a building, to the tenant of a building, the end user of a building, and so on. So you will be seeing that sort of different target audience theme throughout this presentation, and you can also ask questions regarding that in the end. But let's first talk about the benefits. Actually, before we go into the benefits, let me set the scene by showing you a little bit about the technology. I'm not going to, in this webinar, I'm not going to dive very deep into the technology and the details of it, but I do feel that it's important to at least look at the technology a little bit so we understand how we come up with these services and the data. So what you see now on the screen are two different sites. And what we have learned to do in the last couple of years at Helvar is connect our sites with a Helvar Cloud Gateway. Any of our sites can be connected, and data from the light control systems can be collected and stored in our cloud solution, in our cloud platform. Now, inside the cloud, we then apply algorithms and intelligence and machine learning and a lot of computing power into the data so that we can make something out of it. Because when you think of it, the raw data really isn't the key here. The raw data has, in one way or another, has been available for a long time, you could say. But now what we're doing is that we're taking that data and we're applying our intelligence, our algorithms and logic so that we can make it usable and we can make it actionable to the users. So then from the cloud, we bring this data to the users in a very actionable, usable form. Some examples of the data and the features that the users then get include a browser-based graphical user interface. And within this graphical user interface, the user will receive fault notifications and alerts from the light control system relating to the technical performance of the system. And I will get deeper into these examples a little bit later, but let's now skim through them first. Also, what we can collect from the sensors of the light control system is occupancy data. We can reproduce it into a heat map on the browser-based user interface. Additionally, we can display in a visual format on a map the light levels of all luminaires in the building. On top of the browser-based graphical user interface, from the system we can also automate the sending of emergency light monitoring and test reports to the user. A very interesting development has happened recently and will continue to happen going forward. And that is, you might have noticed now there are some blue arrows on the screen. So we are developing features and functionalities into our graphical user interface, into our digital services that allow the user to control and optimize the site. Some of these features we are still working on, so we will be launching later this year most of these control and optimize features, and they will include such features as controlling the lights on and off in any group, selecting lighting scenes in real time, and perhaps one that has created the most interest before launch is creating lighting schedules. This is something that many of our customers have said that would be of great value to them, and that is something we are launching later this year. So the user will be able to create any kind of lighting scene schedule into the calendar beforehand using our easy-to-use web user interface. Also, what we have designed and launched now is a PIR sensor optimization tool. So the user can access the PIR sensors right on the web user interface and change the on-time setting. Let's come back to that also in the following slides. And then, in addition to using the graphical user interface on the browser, together with this connectivity, when we connect the Helvar Cloud Gateway, we also connect a TOSI box, which enables the user to connect to the site in a very secure format to use Designer program. So, in other words, to do proper actual lighting control programming remotely from any location in the world. This is all done and executed with enterprise level data security. We use Amazon Web Services as our web host, and also for integration purposes, any of the data that we have in our cloud and display on the graphical user interface can also be fed and shared to another system using an API access. So we operate openly, and we want to make this possible for our customers. In some cases, the Helvar graphical user interface is the best option and preferred option, but it's good to keep in mind that we can also give API access to our customers to use this data in their own facilities management systems or building management systems as they want. Good. Now that we have a bit of understanding of the technical foundation, let's look at the benefits now a bit closer. So I mentioned in the beginning that there are two main kinds of benefits: reducing maintenance costs and operating costs using this online monitoring side. And this is obviously the title of the whole webinar, so this is something we wanted to focus on. But I will also cover the other benefit, which will be increasing building efficiency. But let's look at now the first point: reducing operating costs with online monitoring. So in the picture now, you see the first example of a site, and this is the Helvar Espoo office. We have mapped our entire light control system on the map using these black dots. Each of the black dots now represent a part of the light control system. It could be a luminaire, a panel, a sensor, or even a router. And the only purpose of this view on the graphical user interface is to show the technical performance of the system. In other words, is everything working okay, or does something need maintenance? And in this image, I have now highlighted, or you can see one highlighted item, and that's an example of one part of the light control system needing attention. So that's a sensor that has been that has broken or disconnected from the system, and it notifies the user. It's very important to note that the system sends an automatic message to the user whenever this happens. So obviously nobody needs to look at the web user interface all the time. The idea is that the system notifies and alerts the user whenever something happens, and then they can take action. So it's quite a simple operation. The system notifies the user about any faults, and let's dig deeper into what this can bring to the end customer. And now again, let's keep in mind that we can have several different kinds of end customers for this service. So the user of this service could be the installer company or the contracting company who is actually installing and commissioning our system. That's in the beginning of a project. But then when a building goes live and the tenant starts to use it, then the user of this online monitoring would most likely be the facilities management company or the maintenance company. So the first benefit happens already in the installation and commissioning phase, so in the very beginning of the project. And if there is an internet connection available for the site when the installation starts, then this is an option. We have some real feedback from our customers who have used our connectivity already in this phase, and the feedback is that the actual installation and commissioning phase goes faster. And a real story about this is that we had a customer who was installing our devices in our system, and while he was doing it, his phone started buzzing in his back pocket. He took his phone out, and on the phone he found an automated message from the Helvar system saying that you are using too much current in this subnetwork. He looked up and he realized, yes, that's actually true. I put in too many devices. And he was able to make that correction immediately, instead of having to realize that afterwards and come back and make changes. So in other words, the system or the software allowed them to avoid mistakes during the commissioning, installation and commissioning phase. And the feedback was that they were able to complete the whole project 25% faster than budgeted. So very concrete savings and efficiency. When we move from the installation phase into the use phase of the building, which is obviously much longer, 20 to 30 to even 40 years, then these benefits are mainly for the facilities management company or the maintenance company. So with this connectivity and service online monitoring, the user will be able to visit the site less. So there's actually less need to visit the site, and this is for a couple of different reasons. One is that because they receive this real-time fault notification and alert, and they can see the system really in a factual way, they don't have to jump and run and drive every time an end user calls and says something's wrong, please come in and check. They can actually check the system and see in real factual terms what is happening with the site. So they don't have to do unnecessary visits. Also, if there are some faults in the system, they can plan them better because they can see from the system that there are 2 or 3 different faults. Okay, we know exactly what is happening, so we can plan that in for, let's say, the day after tomorrow in the morning, and we'll go in and fix them all at the same time. Therefore, they don't have to go every day to do something. Also, the second reason, obviously, quite obvious reason, is that they have remote access. Now, this remote access comes via the TOSI box, so they can connect into the light control system remotely using Designer program. And quite often, Some faults can be either checked or corrected or redesigned using Designer. And when our online monitoring is connected, then the user does not have to visit the site in order to do that. The party who is using Designer could, in this case, also be Helvar. It could be one of our partners in the world. But again, that is an efficiency benefit for everybody involved. The FM company or the company at the building doesn't have to get Helvar all the way to the site, but Helvar can do these remote adjustments and programming also remotely from the office, which is more cost efficient. And thirdly, again, quite obviously, when the facilities management company or the maintenance company does need to go on site, and obviously there will always be some need to go on site, then it will be much more efficient because they know exactly what has happened, with what device, and where it is in the building, because they can see the map and the device location. So quite simply, this notification system, online monitoring, can make the installer company or the facilities management company much, much more efficient. And with that, I conclude part number 1. So this was about reducing maintenance costs with Helvar Digital Services. Now let's talk about occupancy data. So this is the second of the 2 bullet points mentioned in the beginning. This is about building efficiency, increasing building efficiency with occupancy data. Now you can see in the image an example of a building, again our Helvar Espoo office, and you can see different color bubbles on the building. They represent sensors. So in other words, we are now reading the sensor data. When the sensors trigger, how often do they trigger? And we are converting that raw data with our algorithms into what we call occupancy data. In other words, we can build quite a clear map of a facility regarding how much are the different spaces used, at what times of the day, to what extent, and what is the relative occupancy of every single space in the building. This data, this insight into how a building is really used, can be extremely powerful. And I think personally that it will be much more powerful than the maintenance data, which is also valuable. But I think the occupancy data, the occupancy insight will really take our services to the next level going forward. This is something that will benefit mainly the owner of the real estate, the end user of the real estate, the facilities management company also, and those sort of target audiences. There are many different opportunities to use occupancy data, but let's have a look at a couple of examples. The first one here is an actual concrete service that we offer already. We call it sensor timer optimization, and it has to do with the PIR timers. It is a report that we can run through the system or from the system automatically. And what it does is that it compares the actual occupancy data of a given space with the given sensor. It compares that with the sensor setting, the sensor on time setting. As many of you know on the call, every PIR sensor has this on time setting, which can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, even 60 minutes in some cases. And that setting is populated by the commissioning engineer in the commissioning stage. And there's usually no science behind it. It's more about the commissioning engineer's experience and opinion. And in some cases, the designer might have stipulated what it must be. But it means that how long do the lights stay on after the sensors have been triggered the last time. And that is to increase user comfort so that the lights don't go off all the time, but they stay on for a period of time, even if everybody sits very still. Now, the point here is that we can, by matching the real occupancy of a space with the setting, we can tell the user what this setting should be. So instead of using the default number, they can actually change it to the optimized number. In our example here, there is a setting in the sensor which is saying 30 minutes. So the lights stay on for 30 minutes after the last trigger. But based on our occupancy data, we can say that in this space, 6 minutes would be enough, and it would give people the right amount of comfort in the space. So in other words, this setting can be changed from 30 to 6, and if that's done, the user, the FM company, the owner, the tenant, they save energy in their lighting energy. It can also be the other way around. So that's an interesting thought also. In some cases, the setting is quite low. It can be 5 minutes or even 2 minutes. But the real use patterns of that space could be such that 6 minutes is needed, or even 8 minutes is needed. And in that case, also our system can detect that and will suggest a change from 2 minutes up to 6 or 8 or whatever it is. And this is obviously not to save energy, but it's to increase user comfort. So we're coming from energy savings and user comfort, and the end result is optimized lighting for the users. And of course, we can calculate exactly from the building how much light on time will be saved if all these settings are applied. Okay, so this is the first example of how we can use occupancy data in a very real way. And by the way, I'm going to draw a link now from this service into a new feature that we have on the graphical user interface. So now I've been talking about a report that tells the user what the settings should be. Traditionally, these settings can only be changed using Designer. So again, which is something done by lighting engineers and professional people. But now what we're doing is that we are actually giving the user of the web interface the chance to adjust this setting. So now the user using our digital services can change that very easily on the web UI. And I'll show you in a few minutes, I'll show you an example of that. Another example of how occupancy data can be used is space optimization. This is quite a large topic. It's not a specific off-the-shelf service that we can push the button and say optimize space. This is more of an abstract idea that using our heat map, a customer, let's say the tenant of the office space, they can determine how they could develop their office layout or the office space in general. They might find out, for example, that they have 3 phone booths and all of the phone booths are constantly being used, let's say 75% occupancy, which is very, very high. And from that, they could conclude we need more phone booths. And then at the same time, they might see that 1 or 2 of the meeting rooms are not occupied that much, let's say only 20 to 30% of the time. So they might make a real change to say, let's change one of the meeting rooms into phone booths. This is a concrete, simple example of how space can be developed. Also, when you think from a building owner perspective, let's say I'm an investment company, a building owner, developer, and I own a complete office block with 10 different tenants. And I have purchased these digital services from Helvar to understand how my building is being occupied and used. And then I might see one day that one of my tenants on the 7th floor, their occupancy, relative occupancy used to be 49%, but in the next month it's 52, then it's 57, then it's 60, then it's 63%. and it's closing to 70%. With this data, I have now options. It really benefits me because on one hand side, I can go to the tenant and I can proactively bring up the fact that if their company is growing and they need more space, we could talk about options to increase their space because the data shows that they might be needing more space soon. If I don't have this data, and I've heard this from many actual real estate developers, that one pain point is that then they might lose the tenant, because then one day the tenant just gives a notice to say we are moving to bigger premises because we are growing our company. So this is one way the developers can really benefit. Another way, let's say a more service-friendly way, would be for the real estate developer to offer services, offer occupancy data services to their tenants. They could do that by utilizing Helvar and then building their own services towards the tenant. For example, they could have a quarterly meeting with each tenant to show this is your occupancy rate and this is how it's developing and these are the spaces that are utilized the most. So you can see that there are many options, and whenever we think about options to utilize occupancy data, it's very important to first decide the perspective. Are we thinking from the owner perspective? Are we thinking from the tenant perspective? Or are we maybe thinking from the facilities management company perspective? For the facilities management company, a very simple example could be optimizing cleaning services. So based on how the premises have actually been used, they can change and adjust, reduce or increase the amount of cleaning. And they even know at what time of day, because they can see when people are in. They can save money in the cleaning operations, in the upkeep of the facilities, and so on. So I will leave you with that. In space optimization, there are many, many different benefits that Helvar produced data can produce. Thirdly, occupancy data can be used also to optimize air handling and heating in a building. And I know that this is something that has been done also already for many years using a local connection by a BACnet, and that's obviously always available. And that is a more reactive mode of controlling HVAC. In other words, when somebody enters the room, the HVAC goes on or something, it goes on higher. But now, what I want you to focus on here is the word predictive. So again, we are now using the algorithms that we have developed at Helvar in our cloud to interpret the data, interpret the occupancy data in a way that allows us to see into the future a little bit. Our predictive occupancy algorithms can actually predict what will the occupancy in this space be in the next 30 minutes, in the next 60 minutes. And by using this data to drive HVAC, the air quality for the people entering the room will be better. And again, this is especially in Finland, and I see it also in other countries, the indoor air quality is one of the most topical questions within the real estate and office space and building sector in general. So this is one way to increase the quality of air, but in an optimal way. Instead of having the air conditioning on full 100% all the time, this is a way to do it in an optimal manner, saving energy, but also creating good conditions. Okay. So these are some examples that can be done with occupancy data in a space. Let me summarize what I have said until now before I show you the real live demo. So digital service benefits using our online monitoring. First, to the installer, facilities management, maintenance operation company. So this is the target audience. Reduce maintenance costs and save time with online monitoring. Install faster, travel less, spend less time on site, be more efficient with the automatic monitoring of the site and with these alerts. And there's one thing I want to add here as a bonus, as an add-on bonus benefit for these companies, especially for facilities management. And this is again something I've heard directly from our customers many times. When a facilities management company is so efficient that they get real-time alerts about faults and they are able to fix them quickly, they actually do it before the users even notice. So therefore the quality perception is better. In the traditional world, users call the maintenance company or the facilities management company when they get really fed up, when they're really annoyed enough, when they see it 3, 4, 5 times that some light is not working. Then they really get fed up and they contact somebody to move it forward. With our connected site, with our online monitoring, that doesn't happen because the facilities management companies fixing everything before people usually even notice. So the overall quality perception is much better. Basically, users say, "Oh, there's never anything wrong with our building in the lighting side," because they never notice them. So that's a good add-on benefit for the facilities management. Secondly, for the owners, for the real estate developers, for the end users, and still the facilities management company, during the use of the building, the benefit is overall increase of building performance with this occupancy insight. Energy can be saved both in lighting and HVAC. Space can be optimized, and many other things can be done by using accurate occupancy data and intelligent algorithms. So these are the two. I wanted to summarize this into two very distinct kinds of benefits. Now, let me show you an example of our web user interface. Now, what you see in front of you is a building. And the map that we create is a 3D map, and it is created using a CAD file, a DWG file. And then when it's created, it's uploaded into the system. And all these black dots you see now are luminaires, sensors, panels, and so on. So this is the alerts tab in the service. So I'm now in the browser and I'm looking at a specific site, and I can choose from 5 different tabs. If something was wrong with this light control system, it would be highlighted with a different color here. Okay. The event log, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but this is to show you all the events that have happened in the building, not just the faults, but also the scene calls and everything. And this is something that might help in understanding certain faults better. But then, a very interesting one is the occupancy. I clicked on the occupancy tab, and now what I can see is a heat map of the different sensors. And this is a relative occupancy. And when I click on a given sensor, in addition to seeing the relative occupancy of the space, I also see a breakdown for every hour, 52, 46, 50, 19, and so on. I see how the facility is utilized. We can see pretty low occupancy rates at the moment, most likely due to the current situation. The fourth tab is a dimming level information that enables the user to see the exact light level of each luminaire. There's 50%, it's 100%, that light is off, and so on. So this is to increase the understanding of what is currently happening in the light control network. And then the fifth is the PIR adjustment, and I'm not going to change any of these numbers here, but this is an example of how the sensor on-time settings can be changed. So every sensor is listed here, and then you can simply click on the number and change the setting from here, and it will actually apply it in the router itself. So that concludes the main presentation. And I just want to, going through these functionalities here, I want to highlight one thing that, as I mentioned in the beginning, some of these control features will only be available towards the end of the year, so after the summer. So controlling lights on and off, selecting scenes, and creating schedules, those are functions that will be available later this year. Here is, as a reminder, here is a list of features, basically. I know many people want to see this list, and it's sort of a reminder and a summary of the features and technical functionalities that we currently have for our graphical user interface and our services in general. So I'm going to leave that on for a few minutes here, so you can potentially find already an answer to some of your questions that you might have. Good, but I'm going to conclude now my main presentation about the Helvar digital services and how to save operating costs with them, and also increase building efficiency with occupancy data. I think we have some questions in the webinar. I think Josh is going to come back, right, to moderate the questions.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, now I can, yes.
Good. Thank you for the great presentation. Some really interesting features there. And we do have some questions coming in, which is great. So please do put those questions into the chat box, and I will fire them at Ilkka. But the first thing I wanted to ask you mentioned a customer example where some feedback was sent in. I think they might be on the line at the moment, but not able to speak. Is that something you wanted to go over quickly?
Yes, we do have one of the customers that that is utilizing our Helvar digital services is actually on the call, I believe, and he's unable to comment, and that's fine. But I was in contact with him earlier this morning, and I asked him if he's willing to share some thoughts about what sort of benefits have they found using Helvar digital services. And I'm going to read out his comment here. He says that using the Helvar digital service gives us ease of mind that the site is running correctly, and also allows us to see what we can improve for the end user, and also gives us the chance to see how the building is being used in an actual work environment. And this is one of our Swedish customers in southern Sweden using our services.
Great. So that's really nice to hear from a customer as to the feedback that they're getting in the market. So we'll have a quick look at the questions that have come in, and I think a good one to start with probably would be what other updates are coming. So I can see on the list here that we've got the features that are available, and you mentioned some, but where does this kind of go? Is there an end point where, in terms of development?
Well, I think that's a great question, and maybe the correct way to start answering that question is to say that I don't think there really is a ceiling. I don't think there's an end inside. This is something that can really evolve and develop into many different things, and especially using occupancy data in a building, creating these services for the users of the building. Maybe I will answer this question by painting a picture to you. I think I'm a very visual thinker, and I relate to stories. So I'm gonna tell you a short story, paint you a picture of what this smart building could look like in the future. You are a user of a building. Let's say you're an employee of a company, and you come into your company building. you could have entering the building, the door would obviously open just by you being present there, and it would welcome you, good morning Ilkka, and it would take you in through the door without even touching it for hygiene reasons. And then on your mobile, or maybe on a screen in the lobby when you walk in, you would see all the details of the office in a very easy to read format. You would see the office layout on a map, and you would see where the available spaces are, where the available rooms are, where the next available seats are. Also linking to them, you would see that what is the temperature in all of those locations, what is the humidity level of those locations, what is the sound level of those locations. In other words, the system would suggest to you where it's best to see, where it would be best for me, because the system already knows that I prefer a quiet, quite a cool area. So it would tell me, Ilkka, this morning it would be best to work in this corner of the office. This is one sort of scenario we can see in the smart office, and to some extent it's happening already. And I want to highlight that this sort of example is something that is a really end user service. So for the person who actually uses the facilities on a day-to-day basis. So that's a very sort of immediate user service. The other level, I want to point out that the other level is the owner level, the real estate developer level, the facilities management level. And I believe that section of the market will develop into further understanding of building utilization, energy utilization, optimization, and that sort of data will give those owners and developers and FM companies a lot of options to optimize the spaces for energy and people. So there are these two different levels, and ideally in the future, and you can mark my words now in April 2020 that at some point in the future, Helvar wants to be offering many different kinds of services, and they could be many on the owner level, so real estate level services, but also for the end user level services. But it's important to, I think, differentiate between the two of these. There are two different kinds of services, because on the higher level, you can see much more aggregated data, historical data, more sort of big data analysis. But on the user level, it's more about what's happening now. Where is the best place to sit now? What's the available room now? And that's the other side of services we see. I don't know if this answers the question. It might be quite a roundabout way, but I think it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that long-term vision. So thank you for that, and hopefully it did for the person that sent the question in. If it didn't, please do get in touch. Let's move through to see what else we have here. So a couple of operational kind of questions. So what's the entry tool for making the 3D visualization? I think it's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, that is something that our team here at Helvar does. So when we get the DWG file, we spruce it up, so to speak. We make it look nice and 3D, and then it is uploaded by our partner into our system. And I wouldn't be able to go into the specifics of the tool used there. I apologize for this software tool, but it is something that happens within Helvar. And actually, I want to go back quickly to the previous question, because I'm reading out the questions here, and I'm sort of sensing the question is asking about how do the future users get the future, or the current users, how do they get the future features and functionalities? And
yeah, there definitely is element of that.
Yeah, very good point there is that all the current users of our service, they automatically receive all the new features that the service has, and this is one of the real benefits of using a cloud system. So they in other words, they wake up one day and the web user interface that they use actually has new features, it has new tabs, and it has new functionalities, and that all becomes automatically a part of their tool. So there is no new installing or configuration. It just happens automatically. So these are the famous over-the-air updates.
Sure. Okay, good. And there's another brief question here about what is involved in actually kind of implementing this. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily from a software hardware perspective. I assume it's hardware. So what are the components of the system? So you mentioned the cloud gateway and you mentioned the TOSI box earlier. Is there anything else?
From a physical hardware point of view, nothing else. So it's very simple to implement. We simply, as I had in the image earlier, you simply install the cloud gateway, and then also we install the TOSI box, two different separate devices, and we hook it up to the system, we connect it, and immediately start using the data in the system. So you could say that it's almost plug and play. At the same time, we do also in the software side, we create the site, we upload the map, and then also the device positioning is done so that all the devices are put in the right places on the map. Those are the, in a summarized way, those are the steps to implement the service.
Okay, good, thank you. A question here about how easy it is to convert an existing installation with Hellwire routers to be a remotely maintained system. That's a pretty good one to ask.
Yes, very good practical point, and it is very easy, basically along those steps that I just mentioned, but the requirements are simply that the site is programmed with Designer 5, so it has to be relatively new. If it's designed with or programmed with Designer 4, it can be updated, of course, to Designer 5 first, and then these digital services can be applied. That's the simple way to put it.
Okay, good. And a question here about whether using kind of HVAC optimization, whether the API is almost kind of bidirectional, whether it can take information in from another system, or if it's more just an outbound one from Jermaine. Hello, Jermaine. Haven't seen you for a while.
Hello, Jermaine. Yes, I can see the question also, and not getting into too much detail about the API. I can say here that it's so far it has been one directional, so we can send the commands into the HVAC system. All these integrations with HVAC systems obviously are somewhat dependent on the HVAC system itself. So there are different HVAC systems and systems to integrate too. So there's always a little bit of situational configuration there. But on the whole, it is one directional. However, I have heard from my colleagues that the API data, the API link is something that we are updating quite a lot now in the coming weeks or coming couple of months. Taking our readiness to a next level, but more on that later. Okay,
good, thank you. Quite a functional one here from Johan. What's the poll time, I guess, for the data coming in?
So the delay is probably, the point is how real time is the data. We are talking about, actually, I would have to refer to one of my colleagues here who has been developing the system. I don't have the exact time value as per second, but it's real time. It's relatively real time, and that's one we can come back to later.
Sure, no problem. We'll drop you a line after this, Johan. And the PIR time change function, is it live or is that later this year from Morten? Hello, Morten.
Yes, hello, Morten. The PIR function, so the adjustment is live. It's that's the first actual control feature that we have now, and it is live. These other features, as controlling the lights on and off, selecting scenes, creating schedules, those are functions that will come later, but the PIR adjustment is live.
Okay, good. And it sounds like Morten's happy about that as well on the questions, so that's good. Let's keep going with a couple more. We've got a little bit of time left, I think. So
Active Ahead.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Are we looking to integrate Active Ahead into the cloud system?
Yes, the answer is yes, 100 times yes. No. Yeah, I'm happy to answer this because yes, obviously we want to and we will integrate the Active Ahead into this. And you already saw it in my image that I used in the beginning. You know, maybe many people noticed that the other side of those two was featuring an Active Ahead Bluetooth mesh wireless site. So the answer is yes, and stay tuned for later in the coming months.
I think it's fair to say there's lots of development going on in different avenues, so it's all about scheduling that in to get the best product out there. Let's see what else there is here. The next one. So we do Luminaire-based sensors for usage data with the HCG work with this. So it kind of relates to the last question, actually.
I think it's about Active Ahead. Yeah, I think that refers to Active Ahead, and the answer is yes, 100 times yes. Please stay tuned.
Okay, let's see what else is there. Is there any plans for integration with RoomSet, another one of our products, which is traditionally been more standalone?
Okay. Yeah. By the way, Alan Jackson has commented. Thank you very much, Alan from Helvar. He has commented in the question section that the poll time is between 60 and 90 seconds. So thank you, Alan, for that. But yes, RoomSet. RoomSet is not something we have integrated yet, and this is not in the current plan so far. So
okay, fine. And we can always talk about that offline, Leo, if you would like to. So I think that's pretty much most of the questions that we have got time for today. So just want to say a huge thank you again to Ilkka for the insightful presentation. Really enjoyed that. Another great big thank you to everybody on the line for taking time out of their days to join us today. Don't forget to keep an eye out on the Helvar webinar page on our website, which will give you the details on the next instalment. Probably again broadcasting live from here and maybe in Finland or somewhere else around the world. If you have further questions that weren't answered today, feel free to get in touch with us using the marketing@helvar.com email address, or you can contact your local Helvar sales representative. But for now, wishing you all a productive day. Please stay safe out there. So goodbye from Ilkka.
Goodbye, and thank you, Josh. You have been the best webinar host I've ever worked with.
Well, I don't have a lot of competition at Helvar, so that's probably quite easy. So goodbye from me as well, and take care, everybody.